Hi everyone! Welcome to day 2 of our Readers Workshop. I hope you really had a fun time reading Big Friends. I know I really enjoyed that book. I'm curious to see how many stars you gave that book. Today we're going to be using that book again, but we're going to be practicing, as you can see on the seesaw, the central message. And we've been practicing this skill a lot. We did it first with nonfiction actually, but in nonfiction text it's called the main idea. But in fiction text, we call it the central message because they're not trying to teach us one fact. There's a lesson that the character learned that we want to learn as well. Because what the character learns, we can try to figure out how to apply it in our own real lives. And so I'm going to give you a skill or a few steps that you can use to figure out how we can find the central message of a text. And so I'm going to read them to you, and then we're going to model it for you with the teacher. So our first step is we ask ourselves, how did the character feel in the beginning? Then we ask ourselves, how did the character feel in the end? And then the last question we ask is, what did the character learn? Now, not all stories are going to be very clear with a very clear beginning and end, but we just really want to talk about what changed. So some characters can change from the middle to the end, beginning to the end, right? So there's different ways, different points, but most stories really go from beginning to end and how they change. So the teachers are going to model. We're going to be looking at one character and you're going to be looking at a different character. So it's the same story, but two different characters, because cool thing is we can learn different lessons from different characters. So our first character is Shu, and I'm going to go back to the story. And this is the part where this is what I mean by we don't really see, this is kind of the beginning of the story, but we don't even really see Shu's beginning. But let's read and see what happens. So it says, and then one Monday, it's cramping cold, they meet another box carrier who wants to join them. This tiny boy is called Shu. He's watched Bert and Etho every day and finally found a big enough box and courage to ask if he can play too. So I'm going to ask ourselves, how did the character feel in the beginning of this part of the story? How did Shu feel in the beginning? And teachers, when you have a thought, you can put a thumbs up. And boys and girls at home, you can always pause the video to give yourself some more think time. Miss Akimowicz, what did he feel in the beginning?
I think he felt nervous because he said that he needed courage to ask to play with the boys.
Good. So Shu felt nervous, and I love how Miss Akimowicz is really answering the question, how did the character feel in the beginning of the story? So Shu felt nervous about asking the boys to play. Awesome. And again, we want a complete sentence, capitalize the first letter and a punctuation mark at the very end. And did you have another thought, Ms. Rosales?
I felt that Shu felt intimidated because I think the text said that he was looking for a big enough box to join them.
So intimidated is another good word, and I love that. I'm sure Ms. Rosales is using that practice skill that we did before with character traits. We use the best fit word to describe how our character is feeling, or any other ways we can describe our character. Awesome. So I'm going to leave this for here so I don't want to confuse everyone. But of course, everyone has different answers for how they want to write the beginning and the end. But I think Ms. Rosales and Mr. Akimowicz had the same idea. He's not feeling that great in the beginning. He's nervous or intimidated about asking the boys to play. And then let's see what happened at the end of the story. I'm going to fast forward to the very end. And this is the part where you kind of have to watch the video and read the story because it doesn't really tell you what Shu is thinking or feeling. So you're going to have to really think about it, okay? So again, our second step is now we have to ask ourselves, how did the character feel in the end? So it says in this part, Bert loves their time together, their ethos, Shu, birdiness. He loves their 3x3 rhythm. So what happened at the very end of the story? How do you think Shu felt? Ms. Hernandez?
I'm going to say he's probably glad he was able to join the other two in their play.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, because they all just love hanging out with each other. That's what we realized at the end of the story. And again, if you want to reread the story, you can always click on the YouTube video and rewatch that. So great, we were able to decide how did Shu feel in the beginning of the story, how did he feel at the end. Now we have to ask ourselves that final question, what did the character learn? What do you think Shu learned from this experience? And I'm going to give you some think time. And teachers, when you're ready, you can give me a thumbs up. And again, just like last week, we're going to write it two ways. The first way is we're going to talk about just this specific story. What did Shu learn? So Miss Rosales, would you like to tell us what Shu learned?
She learned to be brave or have courage. And I really like that word that Ms. Yakimowicz used, courage, to make new friends.
I love that. And I love that Ms. Rosales gave us evidence for why she thinks that. So Shu learned to be brave and to have courage to make new friends. And just like last week, we talked about how this is what the character learned in the story. That's the central message for that character. But how can we write it in a new way where it talks about how do we use what Shu learned and apply it to our own real lives? How do we reword that to say, maybe what can we learn from this story? Teachers, when you have a thought, so Ms. Rosales said, Shu learned to be brave and have courage to make new friends. So what does that mean for us? Ms. Hernandez?
I would say it's okay for us to approach people if we want to join them.
It's totally okay for us to try and make new friends and ask. The worst thing they could say is no, right? And of course, it is scary, but we can be brave just like Shu, because Shu ended up having really great friends afterwards. Awesome. So we just did the 3 steps, the central message for Shu, and now we're going to ask you to do it for Bert, but we're going to help you today. We're going to help you with the beginning and the end, but I'm going to leave the step 3 for you to try on your own. So we're going to look at Bert now. And we're going to go and see, what did Bert feel in the beginning of the story? And again, like Ms. T said earlier, sometimes it's not the beginning, it could be the middle as well, because nothing really changed for Bert in the beginning. It was just right when Shu entered into the story that Bert changed a little bit. So I'm going to fast forward to this part of the text, and I'm going to read it. One night, Bert smashes his box, stamps on it, rips it to bits. His dad shouts something flat from the front room about being quiet, and that's enough. Bert stops going up Sudden Hill. Etho and Shu stop by sometimes. Bert avoids them. Instead, he stays at home, mostly drawing pictures of 2 boxes side by side. But he misses Etho. He misses their cardboard castles on Sudden Hill. So we're going to ask ourselves, how did Bert feel in the beginning to the middle of this story? Ms. Rosales?
Bert felt upset that he was losing his friend, or he thought he was losing his friend.
Because he thought he was losing his friend. Awesome. And I love that you said that he thought he was losing his friend, because Ms. Rosales, was he really losing his friend?
No.
So it does seem that way. And sometimes our thoughts can be true or they can be false. And we don't know that sometimes. We have to learn to explore our feelings and our thoughts a little bit. And that's okay, because I could understand how Bert was feeling. There could be a lot of different emotions going on because there's a lot that's changing. So awesome. So in the beginning or in the middle, Bert felt upset because he thought he was losing his friend. But what happened at the end of this story? So let's go back to the very end. Right here. Bert likes Shu. Shu is kind, Shu is funny, Shu is daring and brave. Bert loves their time together, their Etho-Shu birdiness. He loves their 3x3 rhythm. It's new and it's good. So what do you think Bert felt at the end of this story? Ms. Yakimowicz?
I think Bert felt happy that he had a new friend to join him in Etho.
Awesome. I know, I want to keep writing ethos too. So Bert felt happy that he had a new friend to join him in ethos. So now he has a new friend to play with. Awesome. So now let's use those. Now it's your turn. You're going to use those, the beginning and the end of what happened in the text, to come up with what you think the character learned. And remember, there's 2 steps. I'm going to go back to what we did. We told you what we thought the character learned in the first sentence. Then we used what the character learned to tell us what can we learn. because the characters are experiencing something, but we can also learn from our characters. So we want to challenge you to write your 2 sentences. Go ahead and tell us, what do you think Bert learned? And what did you learn from Bert as a reader yourself? So we're so excited to see how you're going to come up with your own thinking. Remember, there's so many more and very different answers. As long as you're explaining your thinking, that means your thinking is great. So we're excited to see how you will do that thinking. Thank you for joining us today. We will see you again tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
Don't forget to subscribe.